The year is sometime after 2013, and Ebola was on the rise, so the world is on fire. But hey, Yokai Watch 2 released in Japan on July 10th. So is it really? Since the Yokai Watch franchise was picking up steam, a sequel started development almost immediately. With the help of Yokai Watch 2 using the same engine and some good foresight, the game was able to release a good 364 days later. Level 5 also decided to pull a Pokemon with the sequel, because who doesn't like more money, and released the games into two, and then released an expanded version a year or so later. Not in Japan though, that shit took like 6 months. So in Japan, the two main versions are Gonso and Honki. When the games released overseas, the titles were Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls respectively. Now, how do the versions differ from each other? Not much, that's for sure. Just some exclusive yokai and minor story changes. I'm talking, instead of the bearded man, it's a random child as the gym leader. Sometime later, a third version released and is titled Shinuchi in Japan and Psychic Specters in the USA Beerland. This version is the best one to play by far. Psychic Specters has an entire new post-game and only a small chunk of the yokai aren't available to get. So you sort of still need the other two versions, but as a weird compensation, you get access to befriend an entire new tribe of yokai. Not too surprising, but this game and every Yokai Watch game on 3DS use the same engine. Now this isn't a bad thing. Have you seen shit like the RE engine? That has been used for everything. And this engine has been seemingly used for other level 5 projects, such as Inazuma 11. And that's a soccer game, so you know, it's somewhat versatile. But an issue that may occur is that Yokai Watch 2 would end up feeling more like Yokai Watch glorified DLC instead of an actual sequel. There's only one way to make sure that this doesn't happen. Actually make a fucking story. In Yokai Watch 1, the story barely existed, and what was there was not great. And while that isn't a deal breaker for me, I can't deny that it was the weakest part of the first game. So the story in the sequel is much better. It also starts up way faster as well. Like, check it, I can go to Breezy Hills way quicker. Oh shit, is that January? What's he doing drowning in the river? Yokai Watch 1 took until chapter 7 for things to start moving. Yokai Watch 2 took 4 chapters, but those first 3 chapters or so are mostly just retreads of the first game. Like, you gotta show them the watch and the talking sperm, and we gotta hear Jibanyan's sob story for the dillionth time. You know, for the sake of it, I'm gonna talk about the first chunk of the story, since we just gotta know how these guys found a way to continue from the first. I'll also talk about tidbits on what changes are immediately noticeable. This won't be a full story recap. So let's jump into this dead man's party. As an interesting plot point, our protagonist, Medea, I named him Medea Boo in this playthrough, after the best movie. But also since January is dead. Anyways, Medea gets the iconic Yokai Watch stolen by some presidential candidates. First off, why does Medea have a skylight? He's an average child, not a rich celebrity. Somehow this causes Medea to forget all of his memories tied to the Yokai Watch. Now, what happens to Whisper and Jibanyan? I don't know, it's not really my problem. I want to get some donuts. After some errands, we stop in the middle of 2 rivaling donut shops, and our parents start having a domestic dispute in the middle of the street. Since this game was originally broken into 2, a little gag that was actually implemented into the story is a war between the Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls. It's some shit that was started very far into the past, and this feud has somehow happened to stay alive since then. If you're playing Psychic Specters, you're actually able to make choices between the 2 sides. But if you decide to play Bony Spirits or Fleshy Souls, you're sort of locked onto the respective side. Choosing between the 2 in Psychic Specters actually has an effect on the story. Not much of an effect. It's mainly what yokai will help you later on in the story. I do wish that these choices actually had some weight though, because what was done was very inconsequential. Oh well. But it's a nice way to get some replay value, I guess. I wouldn't consider it big enough for a second playthrough by itself, but if you're going through it again, for whatever reason, you might as well just choose the other side. Medea ends up walking home by himself after his parents decide to talk out this little spat. And on his way home, his iconic pals, Bear and Eddie, show up with their fucking mega watches. The trio eventually meet up with Katie and go bug catching, because that's one of the only things you can do in Japan. Catching bugs and work until you die. The bug catching minigame is the exact same as the first game, as in it sucks. Thankfully, the fishing minigame isn't the same. What you gotta do is spin this around to reel in the fish. These minigames, just like the first game, are only required like twice, and they're placed closer together rather than once at the start and once at damn near the end of the game. After hanging out a bit more, the gang part ways, which causes Medea to find this little thrift shop and checks it out. The owner, Nick Knack, decides to give us this swag-ass watch for free and tells us about a gachapon machine outside. So Medea uses the last of his dough and oh my god, it's Whisper! No way! And all the memories come flooding back. At the memory store. The two realize they're missing their little cat bastard and go find him. Alright, I'm not too big of a fan of the amnesia plot. Yeah, it's an explanation on how Medea will have to refriend all the yokai he befriended from the first game, but I much prefer how Yokai Watch 3 dealt with the medallion reset, with Whisper selling Medea's medal collection for a fancy new watch. It's more in line with Yokai Watch's humor, and doesn't really rely on an overused trope that gets tossed 30 minutes later. The amnesia plot also kind of throws some continuity fuckery there too. Like, there are some yokai that had plot relevance in both the first and second games, and Medea is reacting like he's seeing these guys for the first time. Like, no, you've interacted with the purple big mouth character before. Anyways, Jibanyan's chilling at his usual spot, the intersection, and since we don't have his medal, we can't see him without scanning him. Scanning in this game is a ton better. It's way faster, which makes getting the wild yokai a ton less painful. Since in the first game, this meter went at a snail's pace. It was bad. You know, actually, I'll talk about the main battles right now, might as well. For the most part, the battles are the same. Why fix what isn't broken? You still got the automatic battling, the inspiriting, and the loafing. Ew. But when it comes to using Assaultimate or Purifying, there are some new mini-games added, and I much prefer these new ones, as the mini-games require you to pay more attention than many introduced in the first. Like breaking these chains, you could slash at them like a jackass, but if you notice a crack in one of them, you could slash at it once and it'll get destroyed. Or this other mini-game where you have to control a clock hand, you have to point it towards one of the numbers. They are way better and require more attentiveness, instead of brain rotting your way through fart clouds and circles. I'm assuming since the anime has existed by this time, and because he was in every fucking episode, Jibanyan plays a much bigger role in the game's story. He's around a lot more, so he gets more lines of dialogue, he says more iconic quips or whatever the fuck. It makes sense, he's the face of Yokai Watch. You know, Yokai Watch is nothing without Jibanyan. Without this dumbass cat, the stocks would have gone down to -0 million. Oh yeah, you know what? We're already talking about Jibanyan. Why not just talk about the yokai themselves? In the first game, I failed to mention how many of the yokai, like more than there should, would just be reskins of pre-existing yokai. Their ranks, attacks, and skills would be different, but come on man, that's like really boring, and not a good way to boost that medallion number. It's like if I put on a new shirt, hey look, I'm a new person now! Luckily, I think the only reskinned yokai are some bosses for rematch purposes. Well, that and a shit ton of Jibanyan clones. Look at all the ones just based on fruit. I get this guy's the face of Yokai Watch, you know? But god damn, even Pokemon had restraint with their Diet Pikachus. Also, I don't know where else to put this, but the game's Uptown Springdale and main battle themes have been changed. For the better. Uptown Springdale sounds a lot more cheery. And the main battle theme sounds a hell of a lot more wacky. Which, you know, this is Yokai Watch, Captain Quirky, so it's like a super plus. Another plus are the designs. Yokai Watch 2s are leagues better than a good chunk of the designs in Yokai Watch 1. That is mostly because of the main theme of Yokai Watch 2, the past. Ooh. After those first 3 chapters, we visit our grandma and eventually end up going 60 years into the past to stop a super evil with our grandfather, the creator of the Yokai Watch. Oh, hell yeah, that sounds pretty cool. You know, this makes me wish Nate had the design he was given in the 3rd game. He was already time traveling, might as well give him the Marty McFly, Philip J. Fry fit. He's even got that fucking Yancey cut. And you know, I'm already visiting my grandma. I might as well check out how my grandpa's been doing in the modern age. You know, maybe he's hiding in his room or something. Ah, shit. Well, at least we can still see him in the past. You know, it's better than nothing. Now, I've always liked time travel. My favorite Family Guy episode is Meet the Quagmires, Futurama's, and like my top 5 TV shows, and another top tier movie of mine is Back to the Future 2. I like the first one, but I really like how the second one plays into switching between the past, present, and future, and how it features a lot more time travel fuckery. And even though I'm more of a future time travel guy, like whenever shows do an episode set in the 1800s, I sort of roll my eyes. I think one of the only times where I I was proven wrong. I was like, hey, that was good. That was like an Always Sunny episode. And that's Always Sunny, so of course they were gonna do it well. But since the past isn't a grillion years away, as in there's still some modern technologies, I don't mind it. I don't know, I'm just not a fan of going so far into the past that cars don't even exist. But in Yokai Watch 2, the past is far enough away for me not to experience it, but not so far that my grandparents couldn't, even though both of us lived in only America. But you know, that aside, using the main theme of the past in this game, it only makes sense to have some yokai directly reference actual yokai from folklore. While yokai from the first game somewhat referenced folklore, there was still a good chunk of disconnect. Usually, in the sequel, the yokai that are direct references to the folklore are considered classic yokai. Now this is a genius idea, since the past plays a big part in the story, but also the core of these yokai designs were set in stone since before the birth of Big Man Jesus Christ. You just gotta make the designs more kid-friendly and goofy, and there you go. This doesn't mean that all yokai added are classic yokai. There are still a bunch of new designs, and they're pretty cool. I don't think I really hate any. Actually, you know what, except this guy. Fuck this guy. He looks weird. Oh yeah, quick side note. In the last video, I was going on some like tirade about how there wasn't a Bart Simpson yokai, and a couple viewers actually told me that there might just be a Bart yokai from the third game. You know, it takes place in America, so it makes sense. Rough graph. And I'm looking at it, and I don't know. I mean, you got the spray paint can right there, but the Philip J. Fry red shirt and the Hot Topic hat make me think it's more or less a reference to a general graffitist. So I'd say it has somewhat of a correlation, but not by much. You know, Yokai Watch isn't really subtle with their references either, at least with their more American parodies. Look at Indiana Jaws, Mark Orkerberg, Master Niata, which plays plot relevance. And in the movie, they straight up parody the "Help me, Obi-Wan." Fucking Terminator Nyan exists. So if they were gonna parody a Simpsons character, it would probably be like Barton Nyan or some shit. Homer Shaken Nyan, I don't know. But hey, we're off to a good start. They tinkered what was fucky in the last game while adding bits and pieces to give it some extra flavor. And you know, what's interesting is unlike how Pokemon deals with new species just existing, there's an actual reason as to why Medea couldn't see these new/classic yokai in the first game. That is because of the new, for us, Yokai Watch. Yokai Watch Model 0, which was developed by our grandfather. That is, unless we don't help him out, because if we don't, he won't invent that. But this shit ain't just eye candy, it also affects gameplay. In battle, you can switch between using your regular watch and the Model 0. The Model 0 changes the ultimate and targets to M-Skill and Poke. Now I'm going to talk about these in order of how cool they are. The poking system allows you to poke an inspirited yokai on the opposing side. Depending on where you poke the yokai, you can get more money, some extra soul, do some damage, or even increase your odds of befriending them. And the M skill has your yokai using its ultimate in the Moxie flavor. It's a more powerful move, but in turn it uses up the soul of the yokai next to the user. But also, if the yokai on the sides die or something, guess who can't use the Moxie ultimate? It's definitely a lot more of a risk versus reward. Because of how the enemy yokai AI will usually target a ultimate charging yokai, and since there's technically 3 ultimate charging yokais, you kind of need to make sure that your whole front lines are just a-okay, because nothing is off the chopping block. There's actually a reason as to why it's called Moxie too. You see, our grandfather Nathaniel is a big fan of this series' Maximus Mask, to the point where he wants to imitate the characters in some way. This carries over to Nathaniel even taking the iconic Maximus Mask dance. There's even a little mini game where you do this little jig while training with him. And you know what's funny? I used to do that dance as a kid. Like actually, you know, I did the whole 9 yards. I did the dance. When I was watching that movie on Disney XD, I did that shit. I can't do it now. I lost all my mojo. Yokai Watch 2 has many other mini games that'll sort of take a pause on the main gameplay, and I don't mind this at all. It happens so rarely, and it's only mandatory in the story like twice. The only other mandatory mini game you do is eat dinner. Amazing. A couple other things that you can do is go on a bike race with your friends. Or if you hate those whack-ass NPCs and love soccer for whatever reason, if you find a soda can on the ground, you'll quickly notice that you can just kick it about. And if you kick them into a recycling bin, you'll celebrate like you just won a championship or something. Yay, recycling! Yeah, okay, well I hate fun. I call for recycling to be banned. While you're exploring the world, you might actually find some Noko roaming about. And if you catch them, you'll get a Noko orb. And once you get 8, you're actually able to visit this like Noko's paradise. Most of these little distractions will also give you small items as well, so there's a bit of an incentive to partake in the nonsense. Oddly enough, we're gonna be rolling it back to the Model 0. In modern times, there's actually an in-universe misconception that Steve Jobs, yes, as in Steve Jobs, made the Yokai Watch, cause this lib plagiarized the watch design like a fucking penis, sort of. He actually remade it for public use. I'm sure he was, you know, in cahoots with Nathaniel. Speaking of the past, it looks really cool. Springdale 60 years in the past looks so familiar to the present, but it's different enough so you can explore the little changes that have been made in 60 years. Like the hospital that was burned down. That shit didn't happen 6 decades ago. Obama wasn't president yet, so it's alive and kicking. Other than the major parts like Shoppers Row and the train station, there are a couple of new little places to explore. It also seems like an old-timey filter was placed on the ground. It definitely helps adding to the vibe, that's for sure. One thing to mention is that Old Springdale takes place in one map, instead of being segmented into chunks like the present day. In fact, speaking of the places we visit, the new towns and cities we're able to go look at are a lot more distinct than the locations introduced in the first game. We got a skyscraper, a beach town, a rural city with funny cows. But how the hell do we get to these places? A lot of them are like miles away, well, via a train station. Trains play a big part in Yokai Watch 2. They built this whole train system with separate lines going to and from each station. What makes these train rides a little less agonizing is that sometimes while going through a ride, a little event will happen. It can be small things like the gang talking amongst themselves, or a classmate or teacher saying hi and giving you something, to something more crazy, like a bored yokai that just wants to throw down, or Eddie blasting music through his headphones. I think the whole train thing is really cool. It's pretty cozy sitting through the cutscene going from station to station. But God, am I not a fan of how there are many places to visit that look really cool, but you can only stay in the train station. There are 18 stations, and only 6 of them you can actually exit the station. That is, unless we count the hidden stations. There are 5 of them in Yokai Watch 2. One of them is exclusive to Psychic Specters, and it's some super special post-game shit, so I'll talk about that when we get to it. But come on, without those hidden places, the train station feels empty. Did I just fucking trip? Ow. This would be fine if there wasn't something that sort of soured the experience for me. It's not that bad, but it's notable. When going from station to station, those little events that occur, what ends up happening is that many of them will be repeated time and time again. And I'm not just saying, oh, look at that, we gotta battle another yokai. I'm talking about Jibanyan asking for a chocolate bar for the 30th time and Whisper shitting himself for the 12th. It's like being in the middle of season 13 of The Simpsons. Oh man, I can't wait to see what couch gag they'll use this time. Maybe it'll be another movie parody like the Matrix one, or maybe an homage to those old-timey comedies. No, it's just the circus one. The most used couch gag. Could have done the Ned Flanders torture hour again, that would have been fun. Speaking of side quests, sometimes during the main story, you will be stopped and forced to do a mandatory side quest. You see, Yokai Watch 2's story by itself moves along at a pretty good pace, but they just had to fuck it up. Every so often during the game's story, this little lock will pop up that indicates that, hey, I get the world is exploding in a blaze of fire right now, but Whisper got stuck in a vacuum cleaner, get him out. And these side quests can mean anything, like upgrading your watch, getting items needed for the main story, special bosses, random quests completely irrelevant to the main story, or in super rare cases, as in one, a backstory. One of the MSQs is about Jibanyan and how he ate shit. It's mainly just these grandmas time-traveling Jibanyan back to when he was alive.
Hello,
Amy's house.
I'm home.
And he just gets to hang out with Amy for a bit. And he's all happy-ass too because he had a spat with Medea. So Jibanyan's full of angst. He's all like, fuck boo, Medea Halloween. They put Fuzitube and Liza Koshy in that fucking movie. Chill out, Jibanyan. You don't need to criticize the best movie franchise ever, okay? Now that I think about it, criticizing anything is just a bad idea. Because, improving sucks. We should only want the most okay content forever. This side quest even shows the twist that I was right. You see, Amy was calling this situation lame, not the dead cat. I called it. Anyways, anytime I see the lock pop up, I'm always like, God damn it, because it artificially puts up a wall between me and progressing the story. For the most part, most of these side quests are disconnected from the main story, when it wouldn't be too hard to implement them into the story. Hell, they did this shit in the first game. With watch upgrades, Whisper was like, hey man, your watch sucks. I know a guy who can make it better. And since you intrinsically want to become stronger, and the fact that upgrading the watch allows you to see more yokai and explore more areas, you're probably already like, well, hell yeah. And with the Jibanyan backstory, that could have been easily placed into the main story by just having Medea and Jibanyan having a spat over how the two want to deal with a situation, instead of having him being pissed for being called a freeloader. A side quest is a side quest, not a main quest. It's sort of like being forced to do voluntary work. At that point, it's not really voluntary, Another backstory that, while isn't mandatory, is still pretty cool and is a side quest, is Whisper's backstory. It's how he caused the end of an ancient civilization because he causes people to spout random shit. No wonder he needs an iPad to tell us anything. He's just always been a dunderhead. Now, it's really cool that these developers added these, especially Whisper, since he's like a million years old. Check it, they even made like a whole opening for him. The side quests in general are a lot more grandiose, like this stamp quest where you visit and collect a stamp from each station for a super epic free unlimited train pass. But there are a couple other side quests that have you do similar things, as in exploring. Except instead of sitting down on the train for hours, you're exploring towns and cities looking for whatever you need to look for, like getting actors for a movie, or having a QB in human form hit on every girl he can find like a maniac. Yeah, okay, sure, hit on the freaking bartender. You look like you're 7 years old. And oh wow, look at that, Captain Useless joins back for some side quest fun. Good thing he isn't mandatory, fuck off. While doing some of these side quests, there's a chance that an old lady will stop you and say, I need to go to the store, please take me there. You obviously have the choice to decline, but wow, you're a real asshole for doing that. It's like a mini escort quest. It's kind of funny. All right, sweet. Grandma is now at the store. It's time to go back to whatever the hell I was doing. Terror time is also like way better. In the first game, all you had to do was make a beeline to the exit. In this version, you not only have to wait a bit for the door to spawn, but instead of picking up chests, you pick up these Oni orbs, where at the end of Terror time, that is if you make it out alive and within the time limit, the amount of orbs you collect equates to the rarity of an item you'll receive. So while you're waiting for the fucking door to spawn, you might as well grab a couple. And, I have quite a bit already, and I still got a lot of time. Yeah, okay, you know what? I'm getting some good shit. Oh, fuck, I got caught. Who's this asshole? Why is he giving me a box? Don't open it. Yeah, okay, sure, man. I didn't want to open it anyways. One other addition added to spice up the overworld is the baffle board. In certain areas, your yokai meter will go apeshit. Checking out whatever it is will have you discover a board, a baffle board. It's basically a guess who, where you get 3 hints, and using those 3 hints, you gotta type in the name of a yokai. These are mainly used for side quests and hiding away secret areas. A good example is actually the first baffle board. This 7-Eleven ain't getting the attention it so desperately needs. Now, why would you go to a convenience store? Probably for a quick snack, or to take a leak. And if you've played the first game for any amount of time, chances are you'll already have an idea on what this board is asking for. Like, how many yokai can make people want to eat food? Hungram. Once you type it in, you need to befriend the yokai and place them in the front of the baffle board. They essentially act as like a little minion doing what you ask. I don't like the baffle boards. I think the idea is cool, but unless the yokai is as iconic as Hungramps, I'd rather not deal with them. They're only required a couple times, and when they are needed to continue the plot, the yokai on the boards are already pretty well known, or it's a yokai that you already have. So when going through the main story, it isn't completely lame. Last time I talked about this game's story, I complimented the fact that it existed, but how is it by itself? It's pretty good, especially for a kid's game, I'd say. The stakes are higher, the events are more interesting, and there isn't a character dropped into existence only to give us a key and then loosely given a string of connections to another character, one that actually has some mystery behind it and then just fucks off forever. There are characters that aren't Medea, Whisper, and Jibanyan that have consistent relevance, like your grandfather, Hovernyan, and the grandmas. But who the fuck is Hovernyan? Our grandfather's good friend. Nathaniel starts off as a bit of a lone wolf. He's the one that gets us to the past and actually helps our grandfather stop being a closed-in chode. Nathaniel ends up going through a whole character arc about learning to have friends. We even see the origin of the yokai medals being these little bottle caps, which, I think that's a pretty cool lore add-on. But one negative that I will give to the game's story, near the end of the game, the story sets itself up for a boss rush. There's a burst in the game's story that will require you to explore a small chunk of land, do a boss fight, backtrack to a previously explored area, then do a couple of mini boss fights, and then 2 more actual boss fights for good measure. And while the major boss fights have gimmicks like the first game, such as the first boss fight where it's this big skeleton, he'll use a gachapon machine and whatever capsule pops out determines what'll happen. Or this guy that'll lock the yokai scroll wheel so you can't swap around your yokai at will, instead he controls it. These are really cool and can spice things up a bit.
We're gonna do the 1-chip challenge. Dumbass.
But god damn do they get trigger happy with the boss placements in the latter half. At times they can be really difficult, which that's good. Difficulty is always something that I want. But there are chances that you might have to grind. And since you want to minimize the grinding as much as possible, you're probably not going to pick up any new yokai that are about, because you don't exactly know which ones are worth grinding up your first time around. So I'm constantly hitting walls between the boss fights, which can cause a lot of fatigue for me. I know it's like a kind of a get good thing. Yeah, probably. Speaking of the bosses themselves, look at this guy. He's just a Massiface clone, except racist because he doesn't want these two getting married. That's fucked up, man. Who be blowing up my phone? That's fucked up, man. We live in the year 2014. Whew, shit, I'm getting old. I'm like not 9 anymore. I should think about moving into an old folks home soon. Ugh. Another negative to the boss rush is that very late into the game, you're locked into a specific area. And if you didn't get good enough yokai, hope to God that the ones you need are in that small zone, because if not, you gotta grind. I get the story purpose of locking Medea in modern uptown Springdale, and you're not stuck there, you can go into the past and you have quite the amount of freedom there, but fuck, dude, it's annoying. I just wanted a schmoopy for fusing, but at least I can fuse the yokai to make them into souls for equipables. In Harrisville, that's where your grandma lives. She's real important. If you talk to this guy right here, you can change a yokai medal into a soul gem. A soul gem is an equipable item that you can give to a yokai that'll boost a stat. Check it, I can now dodge slightly better than before. But god damn it, I wanted to get a Blizzaria, not an orb of the damn thing. All I wanted is this item, but the shop I needed it from is closed. These grandmas, they're working for an even older grandma who wants to take control of the world because she got treated very, very poorly when she was alive. I'm talking committing a crime you never did. We actually find this out via another backstory in the post-game. Dame Deadtime is her name, and she is irate. She actually commanded these two to steal Medea's yokai watch, while attempting to remove the yokai watch from existence altogether. On top of that, she also started the feud between the bony spirits and fleshy souls. This is, it's extremely whack how the goddamn B-plot of this game is basically bringing the yokai crypts and bloods together. And you want to know how this feud started? Donuts. Lord Enma wanted some fucking donuts, and a bunch of yokai couldn't decide which they wanted to get. 50% wanted donuts with cream, and the other 50% wanted custard. It's all connected to the start of the game. Amazing. But hey, we end this feud, so that's nice. Just like that South Park episode. Another wacky-ass thing she does is create yokai of the Wicked Tribe. In Yokai Watch 2, a new tribe is created. These little creatures of the night will inspirit the locals and yokai. In battle, this means you more or less have to fight the yokai twice, as once you defeat the wicked and inspirited yokai, they'll disappear and the wicked yokai itself comes out of the purple cloud. It's sort of like a protected shell. In Psychic Specters, you're actually able to befriend yokai of the Wicked Tribe. Not these guys though, only the elite wickeds and wicked inspirited classic yokai. You can't do it in either of the other versions though, just another reason to sell a physical copy of this game for an extra $200. Ah, fuck it, dude. I'm too curious. I gotta find out what's in the box. Oh, god damn it. I could have been a dog. Instead, I've just shit myself. Anyways, Dame Deadtime has her goons create these purple smog machines that'll create and spawn wicked yokai, and also sort of auto-inspirit people. Once this happens, in the present time, you are locked to only Uptown Springdale and Mount Wild. Oh my god, Medea, tie your shoes, dude! In the past, you have a lot more freedom because Springdale is one big map, but since the population is inspirited by wicked yokai, not only do the Mirapos around town get scared and decide to stop working, but many of the shops are closed. Thank God for the millions of equipable items you get in the main story. It probably saved me hours of time. It doesn't help that the couple of Dame Deadtime boss fights are very difficult, especially the final boss fight. Yeah, not this one. Yokai Watch 2 pulls that final form shit again. This fight is difficult as well. Dame Deadtime will steal levels off your yokai to summon more wickeds, which is whack. But for her final form, she becomes this all-encompassing evil and will do things like take away your ability to purify or use items at times. She'll also temporarily lower a yokai stats, steal a Soultimate as it's fully charged, which causes her to use her Soultimate, which hits very hard, and she'll summon these blue sperm things to attack you. Unless you play darts on them, 500 points. If that wasn't annoying enough, sometimes she'll just frame one and spirit your front lines. It is way harder than the stupid ass McCracken. And once you heal the world from evil damn it dead stupid, everyone's able to go home, the future is fixed, and the Model Zero gets created. Nathaniel gets to have a life and a wife and dies at the age of 60. And that's how Yokai Watch 2 ends. That was a good 20 hours or so, at least for me. But what if you want to play 20 more? Well, what are you able to do once you beat the game? What is thereafter? Remember everybody's favorite dungeon, the Infinite Inferno? You can always go through that again. There's also that unfinished building that you explored in the first game that once finished becomes a gym where you can do sort of EV training and boss rushes. Oh yeah, actually, there's another infinite thing called the Infinite Tunnel. where you walk through a, you guessed it, tunnel for as long as the game feels. You can only go through the tunnel once per day, and the more you go, the longer the tunnel will be. But this ain't some desert bus shit where nothing happens the whole time. There will be some random people and yokai that'll appear every so often. Running into people will actually give you some pretty interesting flavor text, or even some multiple choice decisions that'll affect the tunnel's length. But geez, dude, these runs can take a while. Look at this guy. It took him a whole hour to go 10,000 yards. There's also a bunch of cool side quests that only get introduced once you beat the game, like Die My Dead Time's backstory. And if you got a couple pals with you, you can play the Blasters mode. After you experience Terror Time for the first time, Whisper's like, "Hey, where you at, dog? You got the whole hellscape behind us. Do you want to kill Gargaros, Medea? Because Blasters mode has got you all set." Blasters mode is where you fight around Terror Time and collect orbs, but instead of playing as well the player, you take control of any yokai you've befriended. The yokai themselves get split into 4 groups: Attacker, Ranger, Healer, and Crock of Shit. Each fill a specific role so you can complete your goal. But what is the goal? To kill Gargaros, or just any boss, who is very difficult to kill. You see, while you can play Blasters mode by yourself, that's sad. You're supposed to play with up to 3 other friends and work together to defeat the big man himself, with each person filling out one of the roles. I remember playing this a bit when I was over at a friend's house. We didn't get far, as in we lost, so I was sort of excited to play this with a full party. Problem is, since I don't have a capture card or a modded 3DS in general, the only way I could do multiplayer on Yokai Watch 2 would be using an emulator. And Yokai Watch 2 is one of the only games that the wireless connectivity doesn't work while using Citra. You're not even able to do it by yourself. So I had to boot up my real 2DS while recording with my phone for a couple of rounds, for footage.
Ooh, what the fuck? What do you mean you're gonna die? I mean, what the hell?
I did it. We just charged.
I did this shit as a middle schooler. I thought I've evolved from that. But this minigame was apparently such a good idea that Level 5 eventually made a side series about it. It fully fleshes out this idea and gives it its own campaign. At some point, I gotta give it my full attention. I played it a bit last year, it seems cool. Alright, so this is the last thing I want to talk about. Gara Gara Resort. Exclusive to Psychic Specters, once you beat the main game, you're given access to a special and scary train that appears at one of the secret stations, only at night. And after doing a little side quest on the train and a boss fight that kicks my ass, once you get to Gara Gara Resort, god damn, this place looks cool. Look at this shit. It's like Disneyland. They got a roller coaster, a diner, a bathhouse, a freaking showroom. Now, I never experienced this place as a child. I only owned Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls. But by the time Psychic Specters came out, it was like 2017. And around that time, I stopped playing Monster Collectors until like the COVID era. And by the time that happened, a physical copy of the game would have caused me to take out like a mortgage. Before the eShop closed, I was able to get it digitally, so not all is lost. The first thing you do at the resort itself is help out by finding the incompetent employees. That's it, super wage cut for you, good luck being able to live now. When all the employees are found and situations are all fixed up, it's actually cool to explore this place. I mean, check out this slide. This hot spring is neato, very cozy. And I love getting scared by Chef Gargaroses. This was definitely meant to be played after doing everything else though. I was struggling through this as I was underleveled throughout this whole piece of endgame content. And I think that's it. All right, let's bundle my feelings and conclude this. Yokai Watch 2 is leagues better than Yokai Watch 1. They essentially built upon the first game's foundation and fixed what went wrong, from simple things like tweaking the battles or adding simple distractions to something huge like the story or the new yokai designs. The only problem I really have is the pacing of that story. Again, by itself it's fine, but I don't like how it'll be padded out with those mandatory side quests, the chunks of gameplay that are just boss fights, and the train system at times can be a bit annoying to deal with, but even then, the rest of the game is so cool, interesting, and fun that I'll excuse some of the less good stuff. It was a big improvement from the original and was worth going through again. The sequel also did very well in the sales department, in only Japan. Checking some of these sales and yep, that was a fucking success, but everywhere else it, did terribly. The first game only sold I want to say 400,000 copies, and their advertising game wasn't as strong with the sequel over here. It makes me wonder why they even split Yokai Watch 2 into 3 versions. I know it took 3 extra years, but when Yokai Watch 3 released in America, what ended up being released was more or less a definitive version. So I feel like it would have been better if they did something like that. But again, it probably would have taken a couple extra years. So last year was the 10-year anniversary of the franchise, and there were big expectations. However, since then, the only thing we've seen is some cool event toys. Look at this little watch. It's got a freaking screen. A 10-year anniversary event in their mobile gacha game. Final Fantasy XIV doing a rerun of their Yokai Watch event. This article where the CEO of Level 5 5 says how he wants to make porn games, and a teaser that a new game will exist. Hopefully this new game will come out in America, but I doubt it. Every game since Yokai Watch 3 hasn't been released in America. Not the sequel to Blasters, not the 4th game, not even their other side series. The Switch is on its way out too, and even if these games, I'm not counting Blasters 2, the whole 3DS series of consoles has been abandoned anyways. Plus I've heard Blasters 2 was just a buggy mess. Even if those games got localized, it'll probably suffer the same problems that the 3rd game did when it released on the 3DS in America in 2019. Hell, some guy on Reddit sent out an email to Level 5 inquiring about the localization, and boom, they don't got a single plan to localize that shit over here. Who the fuck is using a Drake meme in 2024? We don't do that anymore. He's a pedophile. Kendrick said so. He said Drake's lame. Like Mangy Mutt. But who knows? China got a localization in August of last year. So I'm not ready to completely give up hope. I actually found a way to get Yokai Watch 4 on my Switch. It was 100% legal too, so that was cool. All we can do is hope and pray that Level 5 doesn't completely explode in a blaze of fire for this next game, so the franchise can be alive and thriving instead of being on life support. The eShop on the 3DS and Wii U is completely gone now, so playing this franchise illegally is expensive. And since those Citra devs flew a little too close to the sun, emulation could be a bit harder now. So good luck experiencing it in modern day. But until that next big Yokai Watch update, I guess we'll just have to sit and wait. Months ago, Dante was reinfected by the evil food Banyan and ran off. We haven't seen him since. Everybody was devastated. We ended up hiring a detective. Detective Arthur's Itis or something. I don't really know, I'm gonna be honest.
We have a case to ask you. You think you can figure it out?
Why are you sitting on his lap?
The wall.
We had him draw a sketch of the food Banyan.
Okay, I got the picture of food Banyan.
But it turned out to be a drink Banyan.
I've never seen this type of Banyan before.
And you can't fight a drink Banyan while you're thirsty.
Looks like we'll need to prepare.
How the fuck do we do that though?
Let's just say, they call me the drink.
What's your malfunction?
This is the best day of my life. I promised my parents, I promised you, I would make it into a Hollywood movie. Thank you, Tyler Perry, for giving me the opportunity. I'd like to introduce y'all to Tyler Perry's Boo on Medea Halloween.
Scaredy cat. Yeah.